We are trying to get as many listeners as possible, so if you enjoy these weekly podcasts, don't forget to share them and repost them on SoundCloud. And also, you can head on over to our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/CNE for COC. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another podcast of CNE.
My name is David Caduto, and I'm here with one of our members of CNE. And why don't you introduce yourself? And how are you, Aaron? Okay, so today we've got another topic for you, and this one's a little bit different, but it's fun nonetheless. So I thought what we do this week is because all of the networks have released their lineups for the fall season. I thought what we do is talk about shows that have been, and when I say network, we're only talking about 4 channels. So it's going to be CBS, NBC, ABC, and Fox. And so what I thought we'd do today is talk about shows that have been canceled, shows that have been renewed or new shows, and shows that have been rebooted. And there's plenty of those. So, and then at the end, nearly at the end, what we'll do is we've got a couple of other little topics. One of them being Warner Brothers just opened a new exhibit at their studios, and we're going to pay tribute to one of the better and legendary journalists of our time.
That has left us.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's get started. So basically, why don't you start, Aaron? What is one show, and we're going to start with renewed or new shows right now. So tell me one show of all of them that you're absolutely looking forward to.
Well, looking forward to, as much as I can't wait to see what they do with it, is MacGyver.
Well, that's actually rebooted, but yeah, no, MacGyver's a new show. Well,
you know what?
Yeah,
it is a new show, but you're asking
and
me.
Rebooted show, but yeah, go ahead.
MacGyver is one of those shows that back in the past, I mean, as a child, just watching a show about someone who creates something out of nothing in in one of the worst conditions, it's a great thought, and I can't wait to see how they put that together again.
Yeah, I remember growing up and watching MacGyver myself, and it was one of those things. The older show starred Richard Dean Anderson, and he was put in this, as you said, he was always put in situations where he needed to try and make something out of nothing. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's funny. He's a guy that could take a stick of bubble gum, string, and something else, and make a gun.
Yeah.
And it's just it was a fascinating concept, and that's the other thing too. He was one of those guys that just basically he was always doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah,
it wasn't like, okay, well, we're going to do this for profit or anything.
No, yeah,
else.
he was doing it to save someone, to get out of a sticky situation.
No pun intended, by the way.
No, yeah. The funny, because he uses the most simple objects to create his tools, and that's great.
And actually, so what we'll do is we'll start with rebooted. I'm actually, there's a lot of new shows that are coming back out. The one show that I'm really looking forward to being rebooted once again, and I was a fan of this growing up, is 24. So this is the first season where, and if you watch 24 before, you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. This is the first season which, first of all, we don't have Kiefer Sutherland.
Yeah, he's gone now.
He's going to be on another show, and so, as a matter of fact, he's playing the president, so he's getting bumped up from CTU. But in all honesty, this is the show that was on for years, and eventually Fox canceled it after like 6 or 7 seasons, and
they stopped playing that.
Yeah,
like a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
right?
And then so by fans' request, they said, you know what, we're going to bring it back, but the way we're going to bring it back is we're going to do it in 2-hour increments. So the beauty of 24, for anybody who knows the show, the beauty about 24 was that it was 1 hour, it was a full day, a full season was 24 episodes, and it was 1 hour per day. and that's all you got. And so, and this actually was huge because there had been nothing like it. And so, that being said, what ends up happening is they bring it back, and so they just brought it back last year. As a matter of fact, they did another movie about it. I think it was called 24 Redemption, if I'm not mistaken. And so, nonetheless, they brought it back where it every 2 hours was one episode now. And so the guy from Allstate, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Anyways, he got plenty of gigs from it. He played the president. But Kiefer Sutherland was an executive producer on it and whatnot. So that's, for rebooting shows, that's really what I'm kind of looking forward to because...
But he's not on it now. So
no,
who's the
I know.
Who's the new character?
Yeah, so it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, I mean, for me, I'm all about the traditionalists, so we'll see how that goes. So, was there another show, Aaron, that you really, for rebooting or new shows that you just said, I gotta see this one?
Well, yeah, Emerald City.
Okay.
And with Emerald City, it's from Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
We're not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah.
But it's about Emerald City, and they did a new one with Daniel Frank or with
James Franco.
With James Franco. They just did a redo of that show, of that movie.
Well, and the reason why that you see so many of these things is because it's in what's known as the public domain. And the public domain, for anybody that's not aware of it, is basically after a film goes to a certain point, I want to say it's like 60 years, don't quote me on that, but it's what's known as the public domain, and basically it's free game. So you or myself could write a screenplay about The Wizard of Oz, and we could make it, and there would be no backlash to it. And so that's why you see all these new shows about The Wizard of Oz. And as a matter of fact, this summer we're going to be looking forward to another show, the sequel to Alice in Wonderland, Alice Through the Looking Glass.
There's going to be a show?
Well, it's not a show. It's a film. But once again, it's one of those Disney ones where you can remake it as many times as you want, and there's going to be no backlash. So nobody has the rights to it, essentially.
Wait. But it's Disney who's taking that movie, right?
Right. So they're remaking it. So it's their own product, but they're remaking it.
And
so
technically, anyone can go do that.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where...
You hear that, everyone?
Yeah. So it's one of those things where you can just basically do everything you want to it. So let's move on to... so we just talked about rebooting shows. Let's talk about new shows. What is the one new show that you're really looking forward to that's like, oh, wow?
Well, I've been saying it for a while that my dad and I had always been really into ghost stories, scary stories, anything that's kind of like on the mystical sci-fi side of the realm.
And that's actually, not to cut you off, that's actually, those are, as far as television is concerned, we only have a few of those shows. I mean, it's not like it's dominated. I mean, there's a lot of shows out there. I mean, the one I can think of off the top of my head is Supernatural. And that's like...
That was revolutionary.
Yeah, it really was. It's a good sci-fi show, but a lot of them, like Ghost Hunters and all these other shows, those were on cable. So what was the show that you were going to refer to?
The Exorcist.
Yes.
They're coming out with The Exorcist, and I can only imagine that they can only talk about spirits for so long. They're going to have to start talking about other demons and different monsters. So, I mean, I think they're probably going to take it to a standpoint where it's kind of like Supernatural in a way, or they're going to have different types of monsters and people who they fight on a regular basis.
Yeah. This is one of those shows that to me, I'm such a traditionalist. I remember, and I'm aging myself, but I remember when The Exorcist was one of those shows back, and I mean, I've seen the original Exorcist. I never saw it in the theaters.
The movie, right?
But it was a movie. It was it was one of the scariest movies out there for that time.
Oh, it was the scariest movie at one point.
With Linda Blair and her head turning, it was just the effects and everything having to do with it was just amazing. I'm very, we talk about this in another podcast, which, by the way, in the podcast I was referring to was remakes, reboots, and sequels.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one thing that has killed Hollywood is these three things. By the way, if you like to listen to all of our podcasts, what you can do is we are on SoundCloud right now. And you would search my name, David, David, Caduto, Caduto. And you can find all C&E podcasts up there. And we have done reboots, remakes, and sequels. We've done esports. We've done a ton of others. We're also on Facebook, www.facebook.com/CNE for COC. All those are capital letters. So getting back to your thing about The Exorcist.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I think it's going to be a fascinating concept. I think that it's going to be, we're going to see how they do this, because I think the original was scary. The sequel is but at the same time, it might be over one whole topic, like one person.
You mean like one family?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be fascinating to see, and this is,
I can only imagine how far they can go, though. I mean, do you remember?
I mean, I don't think it's going to be an episodic thing.
Listen to I mean, if you saw the American Haunting,
yes,
they do one season, they do one scenario, and then they go to a new season about something
and that's
completely
it.
different.
And I think and I think that might be what they do here, assuming it takes off.
Yeah,
so,
The concept would be great if they could do that with The Exorcist.
It's a fascinating, and on that same line, actually, and we have another show. And we have a lot of movies that are starting to be made into television shows.
Yeah.
And a couple of those that I can think of off the top of my head, number one is Lethal Weapon. And everybody knows Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
Danny Glover, Mel Gibson. So we have Damon Wayans playing the comedic guy here. And then, so this is going to be a fascinating thing to see how they've done it. I mean, there have been plenty of movies that have taken off because of this. There have been plenty that have bombed, but there have been plenty that have been taken off. And the other movie that came out that basically that's going to be fascinating to see what they do with is Training Day. And
what exactly is that?
So Training Day is, for anybody who knows, and I love this movie, I own it. So basically, Training Day stars. Let me give you a little backstory real quick. So it's a movie by. It's a movie that stars Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke. And Ethan Hawke is a police officer.
I haven't seen Ethan Hawke in a while.
Yes, this was done back in the mid-'90s, I want to say.
Okay.
And basically, he is training in this unit, which is a narcotic unit. And so Denzel Washington plays this lead detective, and he subjects himself to all of these different things throughout the day. And he eventually, he kills one of the suspects, and he does all of these things, and there's an end game here. And so basically what they're doing is, he eventually, the long and short of it is that Ethan Hawke escapes, comes back, and eventually he doesn't kill him per se, but he helps his death come about. And so once again, we're talking about, this is a movie that was a phenomenal movie, and I'm interested to see how they go with this. Because I don't know how are they going to do this, because it was all, you got to understand, it's like 24 in the simple respect. This 2-hour movie was condensed into one day.
Yeah.
So how are they going to, are they going to do episodes?
I think that it's got to be like 24. They're going to take a dynamic where they're going to have a scenario, and because that show was based on a 24-hour on a day and a problem that occurred in that time frame, they're going to continue that, and then they're going to probably do something similar to that.
Yeah.
I could think that a similar show would probably be like NCIS. They'd just choose another scenario, put these guys through that same problem.
Yeah, that'll be a fascinating thing to see.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. So let's now talk about shows that are no longer going to be on television. So there have been a lot of cancellations of shows that have gone off the air that people have said, why?
Yeah, a lot of them.
So
recently.
what is one show that you're like,
huh?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Seriously, huh? Why is this going off the air?
Yeah.
What is one show that you're sad to see leave?
Before I even got to see it, the Muppets. The Muppets. Come on.
Yes.
That show in itself, that was returning, and it was almost like a gold mine with no doubt. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, I mean, what was it? It was less than a semester for us in school who are in school, but for other people, it's been less than a year. It's got to
Yeah.
have been less than a year.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's, I remember the Muppets growing up. Kermit, Miss Piggy, you've got, Fozzie, Gonzo, all of them. And I think they just said, ABC just said, you know what, we've got to spend our money better. And, advertisers, I would have
They
loved to have
advertised
seen the
so great,
advertising
though.
for that.
They did.
Yeah. But, and in all honesty, though, there's not a lot of kids shows on prime time. And
That wasn't supposed to be just a kids show,
well,
though.
I know. It was kind of it's like
brings
a
back
PG type of
Yeah.
thing. And so I think, I can see why they wanted to get rid of it, but at the same time,
Did you see the show?
I didn't.
Okay.
I can't say that I did, but at the same time, I know that I know it was a lot of fun for a lot of people, and
Brings back
it
the
is-
good memories.
Yeah, no, it does.
I
And-
watched so many of those movies as a kid.
Yeah, I think that in the Muppets, years ago I did a report on Jim Henson,
Mm-hmm.
and it was fascinating to see how he created the characters and the effort and how it goes into that.
Yeah.
And so,
My prom was at the Hanson studio.
oh wow,
Yeah, it was
that's
great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I gotta say, there's a couple shows that are leaving us that just really, we were talking about this off air, and I think it's a valid point. And That's Agent Carter.
Yeah.
Agent Carter was, for anybody who's seen Civil War and listened to our other podcasts, there's especially a spoiler one. There's a scene where Cap is holding a casket and walking in a church, and he's at the funeral of Peggy Carter, and she was the founder of S.H.I.E.L.D. And so Agent Carter was about Peggy Carter. And I really think that, first of all, it was a cool show. I mean, I never watched it because I never did. However, it fits, once again, into the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Marvel is just dominating in so many ways, whether it's comic books, whether it's television, whether it's movies. And, as far as that's concerned, once again, here's another show with a strong female role that is going away. And I really think that I hope somebody else picks it up, because it was only on a few seasons.
I think you should probably explain a little bit about what your theory is for why they get rid of it.
Well, I think that it's one of those things where there's not a lot of female, and I was listening to Callie Mellenbaum's podcast this morning about women in film, and there really isn't a lot of strong female characters in film.
Yeah.
And especially in television. And there was only a few. And I gotta say that, they brought up valid points. And the thing is that you have these young girls that, and when I say young girls, let me rephrase this. You have middle-aged, teenage, like 15, 16, 17-year-old that really need good role models. And when you talk about an Agent Carter who is always out doing good, who is always out looking for other people,
Yeah.
who always family woman, and this was a great show all the way around. And Marvel did a great job of basically producing it and doing all of the things they needed to. Getting back to your point, there is not a lot of strong female leads.
Yeah.
Shows.
I think
There just
also
isn't. And I think whether it's Hollywood or television, you need something like this.
I think you were on a. I think you're right, and they really do need that dynamic to go back into the Hollywood realm, and they need to start building that. But as well as this like sexism in the workplace, I think that's changing. I think that's changing.
Well, the funny thing is, okay, and I will say funny is not the right word. The strange thing is, Supergirl, okay, CBS just canceled Supergirl, okay, which was a phenomenal show, by the way. I mean, it lasted a season, and the ratings took off, no pun intended, when it first aired. And so CBS finally said, you know what, we're done with it. The ratings started to decline. In the CW, which, by the way, CBS owns, so they're a subsidiary of it, they moved that to the CW because you have The Flash, you have Arrow, and now you have Supergirl. They did a whole crossover episode with it. So I'm glad that it got picked up, but I don't think that the CW is that. Let's put it this way: in the grand scheme of things, the CW is the fourth, and we should really talk about the CW. We didn't. We're not. But the CW is like the fourth or fifth one in the line. Okay, and so I think that a lot of people. I hope the ratings stay the way they should for Supergirl. I do, but I think more people are going to. I think more people are going to not watch it now, just because of the female lead.
I see.
And I think that people would rather tune into CBS rather than the CW. That's just me personally.
With the show, though, also with Agent Carter, I think that one of the other reasons, and this is a point that Yoav was talking about, Yoav Lipman, he's also in the department, but he was saying that because the show was so great, it was a good show, and so many people liked it, but compared to Agent Shield, or be compared to the Agent Shield,
Shield, yes,
they just didn't compare. It was just way too good, and was competing too much with their ratings.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is, and I don't know if this holds true or not, but in all honesty, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which by the way is a phenomenal show and is returning for all those that are wondering, you have, and this is the thing, Agent Carter and Supergirl have one thing in common, and that is that there's one star to it. Do you know what I mean? You have, so Supergirl and Agent Carter are the perennial stars of the show, and then you have other co-stars, whereas Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is more of an ensemble. So you have people, the Clark Greggs, and everybody can play off each other. And I think that's important too.
Yeah, of course. And which is the problem that we got into this. And I mean, it could just be a theory, but it's a good point. It's a logical point. If one show where you're just talking about one character could pull away and divert the attention from the main cast, the big crux of what this universe is, if it could get taken away, then I mean, I can understand that they're going to start taking away this show.
Yeah. Okay, I think that one more show that well, let me ask you real quick. Well, I'll step in. I think the other show that I'm really kind of sad to see go, I mean, there's a ton of shows that are going off the air, and CBS has a lot of good shows. I think, well, two of them. One of them is CSI, Crime Scene Investigation,
which has been on for a long time.
This show has been on for almost 20 years. And
almost as old as me.
It's had all of these different characters come and go and whatnot, and I'm kind of sad to see it go because, let's face it, it made forensics cool. And I mean, people always wonder, what do they do in those labs? Well, here's what they do, and this is what they do. They go out and solve these crimes, and I would love to see the numbers, and I don't have them in front of me. I'd love to see the numbers of people that have actually said, you know what, we're going to go into forensic science because of this. We're going to do something about this. And the funny thing is, this has got a ton of spin-offs. CSI Cyber, which I thought was a horrible show and should have never even been made of it. But you had two other spin-offs that did really well. And that was CSI Miami with David Caruso and everybody else. And then CSI New York, with Gary Sinise in company, and it was just a really revolutionary show for its time. But things changed, and I understand. They didn't want to do it anymore, and that's fine. The other one, really quick, I want to talk about was The Good Wife. The Good Wife was a show with Juliana Margulies that it's been on. I want to say it was on like 7 or 8 seasons, and it was. I said, "Oh, I want to see the show," and next thing you know, it was gone, and it was like, wow. So, but that was a phenomenal show. So let me ask you, what? Give me one more show that you're really
Sad
to
to
see
see go.
go.
You know what? Before I even got to see it, it was Rush Hour.
Yeah.
There you I
go.
looked it up yesterday. I saw, Rush Hour. They're coming out with the Rush Hour. They came out with the Rush Hour and then they stopped it. But
Well, I think the ratings were so poor to begin with. But then again, there's another movie that they tried to pull into a television show.
I mean,
and it just didn't work.
I can understand. Hey, you know what? This is great. This would be a great show, but not without the main real characters who played in the movie.
Right.
I mean, you can't really
have
make
to-
that work.
And
no.
see that. I'll go back to this too. I mean, it's not on our list here, but Limitless.
Mm-hmm.
Limitless is a show that may not be coming back. And for all those that have seen Limitless, it's
Can you say ironic?
yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, for all those that don't know what Limitless is, it's basically it's a movie, and it starred Bradley Cooper and Robert De Niro, and Bradley Cooper was a struggling author. And he says to his buddy, or he approaches him and he's like, I got this great new pill that you got to try. And so Bradley Cooper says, all right, well, I got to try something. So
Yeah, he's got
he
deadlines.
takes his pill, and it enhances everything of his mind. I mean, like his memory, his
Stamina,
everything.
concentration,
Exactly, everything.
his looks.
Yeah, absolutely. And so basically, as he continues to take this pill, he learns new languages. He learns martial arts in hours.
He learns the stock market.
Not years. Everything. And you're right. He plays the stock market, and he gets a job with Robert De Niro's firm. And so, meanwhile, he's trying to, he's got a fiance, and his fiance is like, whoa, this is really cool. And so, long story short, De Niro tries to get him to go work for him. And so, the bad guys come after him for the pills, and he eventually gets away. But it's like, okay, so I thought it was fascinating. But getting back to the television show, Bradley Cooper actually starred in the first episode, and he makes appearances every now and then, which I thought was kind of cool because you really needed to see the actual character.
Yeah,
And say,
change.
Okay, change, and see this really does work. And then Jennifer Carpenter, who had done Dexter for like 8 years, I love her to death.
Great actress.
Great actress. She did. So she stars as the cop, believe it or not, which she did in Dexter, but at the same time was in a different role. And so in the television show, they basically use his skills to help them solve crimes. And so, of course, the sergeant says, no, 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 no. And then, of course, he reluctantly agrees. So they use his skills and to go solve crimes, which I thought was a fascinating concept. But at the same time, and that was, but that didn't last long. And so I think it's coming back for another season.
I think I saw that on the
Yeah,
list
I
of
think it
returning
is coming
shows.
back for another season, which is going to be fascinating to see where they go with this. And, it's one of those things. But in all honesty, though, I am excited for this network lineup this season. I think that there's a lot of potential.
Yeah, they have a lot of great stuff. 60 Minutes is coming back.
Yeah, we really, 60 Minutes, which is coming up.
Modern Family is still there.
Yeah, I mean,
Still going strong.
there's so many new shows and so many old shows. When I say old, I mean like a few seasons.
Dancing with the Stars.
That's been on for 20 years.
Yeah.
And our friend whom we're trying to get on, bear with us, George Pinocchio, he's been to every single taping in 20 years of that show, which is almost, I want to say, 200 or 300 shows. Fascinating.
Also a great guy.
Yeah, fantastic.
Such a professional.
So, that's essence of the word professional. But digressing, so to kind of get off topic, what we wanted to do is talk about a couple of other things. Number one, so Warner Brothers just opened an exhibit at their studios about Suicide Squad. And so, obviously, this is the new big film by Warner Brothers that's coming out in the beginning of August. And, it has the Joker and Harley Quinn and Deadshot and all these other stars, and so...
it should be, the thing should be out actually in May, at the end of May.
Yeah, it actually opened the other day. I know you're extremely excited for this.
For Suicide Squad, yes. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
It's one of those, well, DC has to really
It just seems like it keeps...
pick it up now.
Like, what is taking so long for this movie to come out? I can't believe this.
Well, I think in all honesty, well, we would talk, I don't know if we discussed this earlier, but they actually had to go back and do 2 weeks of reshoots.
Yeah,
And they made it a really lighter film and with more jokes.
Jovial.
And I think that's going to be its downfall.
This came after Batman versus Superman.
Yes.
So what I'm thinking is that they realized what kind of movie and what kind of what kind of demographic they were really after. So now they realized, okay, you know what? We're probably going to be dealing with a younger crowd. We want people who are similarly interested into Marvel to now come to DC and get their rivalry with positive characteristics from the DC universe and superheroes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, in all honesty, I think DC is just trying to save their ride at this point.
Yeah, they're doing what they can.
And look,
Salvage
when I say this, in all honesty, it's more of the fact that yes, Superman has made his money, and Batman and Superman has made his money, and everything else, and has gotten great reviews as far as the fans are concerned. But it was okay reviews as far as
Batman versus Superman.
yeah,
right?
as far as like critics. But the fact remains that this movie was made for the fans, no doubt about it. And that being said,
I'm a critic of a good movie and the quality of a movie. And whenever I saw that movie, I would have to say that there are just some things I didn't agree with. And
yeah, I mean, I think that it's just one of those things where I think that it, like I said, it made its money, but the simple fact remains too that when you have a movie like Civil War, which by the way was the same running time as Batman Superman, but it flew by. And I think the fact is too that when you had the politics not done, and don't get me wrong, that was the whole premise of the film,
Yeah.
Captain America against Iron Man, but it was very little politics. You saw some of the recruiting, and then they got to the fight. And then, you had the end game after, and it was like, okay, this is cool. It sets up another one. And I just think that,
they're not on their A game yet.
No.
They don't know what they're still trying to determine what to do.
and I think that's the problem.
As a studio.
I really, really do, because they got into this with the best intentions. Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Yeah, it was just Marvel. They were
But at the same time,
monopolizing the business.
I really do think that, if they don't, and I said this before and I'll say it again. I thought if Dawn of Justice flopped, they were going to try and, make it up. Okay, fine, we'll do it with Suicide Squads. I don't know what DC is going to do if this doesn't do well. And the reason I say that is they don't have another movie coming out for maybe like 6 or 8 months.
See,
and it just...
I think you're right. You're right. What are they going to do? But you said that also for the movie that was Dawn of Justice. And when we said that Dawn of Justice, what are we going to do whenever it doesn't do well, or if it doesn't do as well as they thought it was going to do? They have a whole franchise of movies that are coming out now. They have Wonder Woman, and they have this. They have Aquaman. They have all these characters that they placed in a position to have their own movies. So we're introduced to these characters, but I mean, who's to say that after we were introduced to them with a movie that didn't do as great as we thought it was going to do? I mean, Rotten Tomatoes didn't give it a great rating. So when we see these characters come back to the screen, are we expecting the same characters we saw from a movie that flopped, or are we seeing an
according
updated
to DC,
version?
It didn't flop, and Warner Brothers didn't flop.
So according to DC, they didn't.
Yeah,
flop.
I mean, you got to understand, they wanted this movie to do halfway decent, and I think in their eyes they said, okay, this movie was for the fans, and so when they'll never say, oh, this movie didn't do as well as we thought it would. That being said, so we're getting off topic here, but here's the thing. Warner Brothers just opened this exhibit.
Yeah.
That basically you can go now and you can see all of the different costumes, from like Harley Quinn to Deadshot to even the Joker. So that's going to be fascinating to see how they what it's like. I'm curious to see how that is, and hopefully, as a matter of fact, I was speaking to our friend Nicholas White, whom we had on about 2 months ago, and
Give or
he
take,
was
yeah.
actually there. So hopefully he could send us photos from that. So
Hopefully, yeah, they don't have too many licenses on that right now.
So the last thing I want to touch upon today is I want to pay tribute to somebody we lost in the journalism world. And so he was with 60 Minutes for about 45 or 50 years. And Morley Safer, I'm referring to Morley Safer. He passed away today at 84. And basically he was one of those decorated journalists you'd ever want to see. I mean, he won 15 Emmys. He won multiple Peabody Awards. He won, I think he's got an Edward R. Murrow Award to his credit. I mean, when you talk about journalism, when you talk about professionalism, this is what you talk about. And 60 Minutes has been on the air for, 45, 50 years, and he was almost one of the founding members. Mike Wallace passed away a few years ago, but it shows that there are not a lot of top-notch journalists left. And,
I don't know if we can say that much. I think like he came from a different generation.
He absolutely did.
And
I mean, he covered Vietnam.
That is,
he covered, he covered the crisis in I'm blanking, the Middle East in the 80s. I mean, he was everywhere.
Yeah.
And basically the thing is, there are no more journalists like this anymore. 60 Minutes is one of the last news programs out there on television that tells you the truth. All the time. It tells you the truth. Regardless of if you want to hear it or if you like it or not. And, whether it's, Lance Armstrong and his, doping scandal, or, MIAs in Vietnam that we haven't spoken about, if that were the story, or whatever it is. And they really, and I got to commend CBS, because this is one of their benchmark programs, that Sunday nights, after football, or, was after The Good Wife, which, I don't know how they'll do that now.
which is prime time for television.
And it just brings to a different light how, how people do journalism today. And, it's one of those things where I think that, it's, they're actually, believe it or not, I can't believe I'm saying this, they're moving it to 7 o'clock. And the reason I say this is because the fact is that this used to be on at like 9 o'clock, 9:30. I mean, this is a show now that, and I'm shocked they didn't move it later back. And the reason for that is, I mean, you've got your football, and I understand that, but at the same time, it's like, wow, this is going to be right after, football. And I think it might be a good segue. But, but he was a fantastic journalist, and I think everybody that
Respects news.
yeah, absolutely. Everybody who respects news, everybody who respects the whole news journalism,
Yeah.
and if you want to become
The
a
mentality.
journalist and everything else,
Hmm.
those are the kind of people you want to look up to. Don't, and I would say this personally, don't cut corners. Always check your sources. And I mean, they ran stories that you wouldn't even think about, but they did it right. And, so it's a shame. I mean, we lose the good ones. We're starting to lose the good ones. We really, really are. And we really need to not take them for granted anymore, Aaron. I think I know I'm going off on a tangent, but we as a society, I think we need to take our journalists, whether it's television or print, stop taking them for granted. And, when we lose somebody like that who is doing this program for 40 years, it's just so. But, yeah, I mean, 60 Minutes is one of those shows that when 60 Minutes goes, I will say one thing. When 60 Minutes goes off the air, it's going to be one of those shows they go, oh my God, they're canceling 60 Minutes?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like one of those shows that's going to go away anytime soon.
I don't. No. Regardless, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right saying that. I don't think you'll ever see 60 Minutes. I mean, what I think is
it's
will
almost
continue.
Necessity. It's like,
I mean, in all honesty, look who they have now doing it. Charlie Rose. They have others doing it. So
it's one of the things that carries CBS. I think it's what put it on the chart.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. Okay, well, that's all the time we have today. I want to thank Aaron for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah. So next week we're still up in the air on what we're going to do next week. We'll keep you posted. Okay. I'm David Caduto.
And I'm Aaron Lanuza.
And you've been listening to C&E.
Thank you for watching and listening.
Thank you for listening.
And listening.
Thank you for listening.
And listening.
Thank you for listening.
And
Thank you for
listening.
listening.
And
Thank you for
listening.
listening.